It was a quiet morning in court, but something felt different. Everyone looked toward the main door as two police officers entered, walking with a girl between them. She was thin, dressed in old clothes, and had handcuffs around her small wrists. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just walked slowly, her head down, like she had seen too much for her young age. Her name was Zoya, just 16 years old. Judge Roy sat high on his bench, wearing his black robe. He was known for being strict, proud, and cold. He didn't believe in second chances. When he saw Zoya, he raised his eyebrows. A street thief? He asked the lawyer with a bored voice. No, Your Honor, the lawyer replied. She's accused of stealing food from a shop. Judge Roy smirked. Stealing food? How original. People in the courtroom laughed quietly, but Zoya didn't react. She stood still, her hands in cuffs, her face blank. Judge Roy looked at the paper in front of him. It had Zoya's case file. Orphan, homeless, no school, no father, mother, deceased. He looked at Zoya again. You don't have anything, do you? Zoya finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but her words were strong. I have the truth. The courtroom went silent. The judge leaned forward. Oh, and what truth is that? Zoya raised her eyes slowly. For the first time, she looked straight at him. I didn't steal that food for myself, she said. Then for who? The judge asked. For my little brother, she replied. He's 5 years old. He was hungry. There was no anger in her voice, no begging, just honesty. Some people in the courtroom shifted in their seats. Others looked down, ashamed. But Judge Roy was not moved. You expect me to believe that? He said. You broke the law. Zoya took a deep breath. You broke a promise, she said quietly. The judge narrowed his eyes. What did you say? Zoya looked at him again. You broke a promise. To my mother. Whispers spread in the courtroom. Judge Roy's face changed, just for a second. He blinked, surprised. I don't know your mother, he said firmly. Zoya replied, Yes, you do. Now the room was filled with tension. Even the officers looked confused. Judge Roy leaned back in his chair. Explain. Zoya said nothing. Instead, she reached into her pocket slowly. The officers moved to stop her, but she only pulled out an old photograph. It was folded and torn. She held it up. The judge stared at the photo. His face turned pale. The photo showed a woman, young, tired, but smiling. And beside her, a much younger Judge Roy, without a robe, wearing a simple shirt, standing beside the woman, holding her hand. Zoya said, That's my mother. Her name was Amina. You knew her 11 years ago. Judge Roy couldn't speak. Zoya continued, She came to you for help. She trusted you. She said you were a good man. Once. Everyone in the courtroom was silent. The judge looked like a man who had seen a ghost. A lawyer stood up. Your Honor, should we continue this case or? Sit down, the judge said quickly. He looked at Zoya again. What are you trying to do here? He asked, now nervous. Zoya replied, Nothing. I just want the truth to come out. Judge Roy stood up from his chair, suddenly angry. You think bringing an old photo will change the law? Zoya didn't flinch. No, she said, but it might remind you of the law you forgot. A heavy silence fell in the room. Judge Roy's hand was shaking now, but he hid it behind his back. Zoya looked at the people in the courtroom. I'm not asking for pity, she said. I'm asking for justice. For my mother, for my brother. For the promise you broke. Judge Roy sat back down. He couldn't look at the photo anymore. His voice was weaker now. We'll continue this hearing tomorrow, he said. But sir, the lawyer protested. I said tomorrow, the judge repeated, more firmly. The officers took Zoya away again, but this time she walked with her head high. As she passed the judge, she said one last thing. Do you remember now, Judge Roy? Or do you need more proof? The next day, the courtroom was full. People had heard what happened yesterday, how a teenage girl had shown a photo that shocked the arrogant Judge Roy. Now, everyone wanted to know the truth. Was it real? Did the judge really know her mother? And why was he so scared? Zoya was brought in again, still wearing handcuffs. But her eyes were calm. Her steps were steady. She didn't look like a criminal. She looked like someone who had nothing to lose, and something big to say. Judge Roy sat in his seat, pretending to be calm. But inside, he was not. He had barely slept. All night, that old photo kept playing in his mind. Amina, her voice, her trust, her tears, and the promise he had made, then walked away from. The courtroom officer said, "Case number 327. Zoya, age 16, charged with theft." Judge Roy cleared his throat. "Begin." The lawyer stood. "Your Honor, this girl has no job, no home, and no legal guardian. She was caught stealing food from a shop. We recommend strict punishment." Zoya said nothing. Judge Roy looked at her. "Do you accept the charges?" Zoya replied, "Yes, I took the food, but not to harm anyone. My brother was sick." He slammed his hand on the desk. "Do not play with emotions here. This is court, not your drama stage." People in the courtroom gasped. But Zoya didn't flinch. She slowly looked up and said, "You think this is a game?" Judge Roy leaned forward. "You think you can come here and embarrass me with an old photo? That you can blackmail me in public?" Zoya raised her eyebrows. "Why would the truth embarrass you, unless you're hiding something?" The room went silent. The judge's face turned red. "I don't know your mother," he shouted. "I meet hundreds of people." Zoya calmly took out another item from her pocket, a folded piece of paper. She handed it to the officer, who gave it to the judge. Judge Roy opened it. It was a letter, written in his own handwriting, old but clear. "To Amina, I promise to help you and your daughter. Please stay strong. Roy." The judge froze. His hands trembled. He quickly folded the paper and placed it under his file. Zoya said, loud enough for all to hear, "You promised her help when she was in danger. Then you left. She waited. She died waiting." Whispers filled the room. People looked at the judge with questioning eyes. Judge Roy slammed the gavel. "Silence, or I will clear the courtroom." He turned to Zoya. "This is not a place for emotional blackmail." Zoya's voice didn't shake. "No, this is a place for justice. Isn't that what you used to believe in?" Judge Roy stood up, angry and embarrassed. "You are just a child. What do you know about life, about law?" Zoya answered, "More than someone who runs away from his promises." The judge pointed at her. "One more word, and I will charge you for contempt of court." She looked him straight in the eyes. "Charge me with the truth, then. But before that, look me in the face and say you don't remember my mother." The courtroom was silent again. All eyes on Judge Roy. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His pride was hurt. His past was coming back. And worst of all, people were watching. Zoya whispered, "You can try to scare me, but I am not here to win. I'm here to tell the truth." The judge sat down slowly. His voice was low now. "We will continue this case after a short break." He stood and left the room, his face pale, his steps unsteady. People began whispering again. Who was this girl? Why was the judge so afraid of her? What really happened between him and her mother? Zoya sat back in her chair. The handcuffs still hurt, but she didn't care. Because for the first time, the powerful man who once walked away was finally listening. The court resumed after the break, but the air had changed. People were no longer laughing at the teenage girl. They were waiting to hear more from the girl who had shaken a powerful judge with just a photo and a letter. Zoya sat quietly, still calm, Still strong, Judge Roy returned to his seat. He looked tired, but his face tried to stay cold, as if nothing had happened. But everyone could see something inside him had changed. The officer announced, "Case 327, Zoya." Continued. Judge Roy looked at her. "This court will now allow the accused to speak," he said. "You say I knew your mother. Prove it." Zoya stood up slowly. "I don't have big lawyers," she said. "I don't have power, but I have memories and the truth." She looked around the courtroom. "And I think it's time everyone hears it." Zoya began to speak. Her voice was clear, not loud, but every word touched the heart. "It was 11 years ago. I was only 5. My mother, Amina, worked in a small factory. She was kind, she was brave, and she was scared." "Why scared?" asked Judge Roy, trying to sound uninterested. "Because the factory owner was a dangerous man. He used to hurt women. My mother saw him do something wrong to another woman. She wanted to report him." Zoya paused. Her voice softened, but no one believed her. She was poor, just a worker. One of the women in the courtroom wiped her eyes quietly. Zoya continued, "My mother was desperate. She came to the police. They ignored her. She came to court. They laughed at her. Until one day, a young law officer told her he would help." Judge Roy looked down. He knew what was coming. Zoya looked at him. That officer's name was Roy. He was kind to her. He said she was brave. He promised he would fight her case. She smiled for the first time in weeks. Zoya took out an old drawing, a child's drawing. "This is something I drew that day," she said, showing it to the court. It showed 3 stick figures, a woman, a girl, and a man in a tie. "My mother told me, this man will help us. She trusted you." The courtroom was silent. People leaned forward to hear more. Judge Roy whispered, "Then what happened?" Zoya looked down. "Then you disappeared." Judge Roy's head jerked up. "You never came back. She waited outside your office for 3 days. You changed your phone number. You never called. You never wrote. She cried every night. Then one day, she was gone." Gasps filled the room. Zoya didn't cry. Her voice didn't shake. She had cried enough in her life. She died of pneumonia. But I think she also died of heartbreak. Judge Roy leaned back in his chair. His hands gripped the arms tightly. "I didn't know," he whispered. Zoya stared at him. "You knew enough to walk away." The prosecutor stood up. "Your Honor, we must return to the matter of theft." Zoya said, "I didn't come here to escape punishment. I came to remind you what justice means." She turned to the judge again. "My mother believed in you, and I wanted to see if she was wrong." The courtroom was filled with emotion. No one moved. No one blinked. Even Judge Roy's eyes were wet, though he wiped them quickly. He had spent years hiding behind law and power. But now one small girl had made him face the truth. He cleared his throat. "Court will resume tomorrow. I need time to review this case." As he stood up, Zoya said one last thing. "She always said you were a good man. I still hope she was right." Judge Roy didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study, reading the old letter again, the one he had written to Amina, Zoya's mother. His hands shook. The memories hit him hard. He remembered Amina's eyes, full of pain and hope. He remembered his promise. He remembered how he broke it. The next morning, Judge Roy entered the courtroom quietly. He didn't speak much. He looked at Zoya, the girl who had forced him to face his past. Then he looked at the packed room, full of eyes waiting for answers. This wasn't just a theft case anymore. This was about broken promises and a buried truth. Judge Roy took a deep breath. "I have something to say before we continue," he said. People leaned forward in their seats. Zoya stood, alert but calm. I knew her mother, he began. Her name was Amina. And yes, I promised to help her. Gasps filled the room. Zoya's eyes didn't move. She came to me with a case, he continued. She was scared, but brave. She told me something no one else had the courage to say. I told her I would fight for her, that I would be there. He looked down. But when things got tough, I backed away. The room was silent. I didn't leave because I didn't care, Judge Roy said. I left because I was scared. My job was new. The man she accused was powerful. He threatened me. I thought I could come back to her later. He paused. But I never did. He looked at Zoya. I didn't know she died. I didn't know she had children. Until yesterday. Zoya said quietly, but you knew you broke a promise. The judge nodded. Yes. People looked at him differently now, not just as a judge, but as a man who had once failed, and now stood before his own guilt. The prosecutor stood up. Your Honor, while that story is moving, we must address the crime. Judge Roy nodded. Yes, the theft. Let's look at it. He picked up the file. A 16-year-old girl stole bread, milk, and cough syrup. No weapon, no violence. Value, less than 500 rupees. He looked around the room. She didn't run. She didn't lie. She told the truth. The judge turned back to Zoya. Why didn't you run away after the theft? Zoya replied, because I wasn't raised to run from the truth. I was raised to face it, like my mother did. Judge Roy felt a lump in his throat. He closed the file. This court believes justice is not only about punishment, it's about understanding. And sometimes, correction. He looked at the lawyer. Does the shop owner want to press charges? The lawyer hesitated. Sir, the owner is here. A middle-aged man stood up in the back. He spoke softly. No, sir. I don't want to press charges. I want to help her. People looked at him in surprise. She didn't steal for greed. The man said, she stole to survive. If I had known, I would have given her the food. Judge Roy nodded. Then this court dismisses the case on one condition. Everyone leaned in. He looked at Zoya. You will go back to school. You will get help. And you will not be alone. Zoya's eyes widened. Who will help me? Judge Roy took a deep breath. I will. Gasps echoed around the room. The proud, powerful judge was now offering to help the girl he once left behind. Zoya blinked. Why? Because I failed your mother, he said. But I don't want to fail you. He stepped down from his chair and stood in front of her. I can't change the past, but maybe I can help change your future. The courtroom was still. Zoya looked at the man who once walked away, now standing beside her. For the first time, tears fell from her eyes. Not from pain, but from hope. After the court session, the news spread like fire. A teenage girl forgives the judge who failed her mother. Some called it dramatic. Others called it justice. But for Zoya, it was something else. It was the start of a new life, one she never imagined. Judge Roy called her to his office the next morning. She walked in, unsure what to expect. But this time, there were no guards, no handcuffs, no shouting. Just 2 chairs, and a man who finally looked human. He gestured toward the chair. Please sit. Zoya sat, quietly. Roy spoke first. You must be thinking, why is a judge offering help to a girl who almost destroyed his reputation? Zoya said calmly, I didn't want to destroy anything. I just wanted the truth to be heard. He nodded slowly, and it was loud and clear. There was a pause. Then he took out a paper and placed it on the table. This is a scholarship form. One of the best schools in the city has agreed to take you in. Zoya looked at it. Why would they help a thief? Judge Roy leaned forward. Because they heard your story, and they didn't see a thief. They saw a fighter. Zoya blinked, surprised. He continued, but there's a condition. Zoya raised her eyebrow. Another deal. He smiled, softly this time. Yes, you go to school. You study hard. You don't give up. And you help others like you when you grow up. Zoya thought for a moment, then nodded. That sounds fair. She signed the paper. Judge Roy handed her a file. You'll stay at a hostel. They'll take care of food and books. I'll check in once a week. Zoya looked at him. And what do you get in return? He looked away, then said quietly, a second chance. That night, Zoya entered the hostel room. It was small, but clean. For the first time in months, she had her own bed. She sat on it, holding her mother's photo. Amy, she whispered, I think you were right. Maybe he was a good man, just lost. Weeks passed. Zoya started school. At first, she felt out of place. Her old clothes, her silence, her past. But soon, people began to notice her sharp mind. She asked questions no one else did. She helped others with homework. She smiled, a little more each day. Judge Roy kept his promise. He visited every Friday, always asking, Are you okay? Do you need anything? Sometimes she said no. Sometimes she said yes. But every time, she said thank you. One day, he brought her a small box. What's this? She asked. Open it, he said. Inside was a necklace, a silver chain with a simple pendant. This belonged to your mother, he said. She gave it to me, the day I promised to help her. I didn't deserve to keep it, but now it belongs to you. Zoya's hands trembled as she took it. She didn't say a word. She just hugged it close. Back in his car, Judge Roy wiped his eyes quietly. She forgave me, he whispered to himself. She really did. But not everyone was happy. In the shadows, someone was watching. The man Amina once tried to expose, the powerful factory owner. He had seen the news, heard the stories. He remembered Zoya's mother. And now he had one thought. If the daughter is still talking, my secrets aren't safe. Zoya's life was finally getting better. She was doing well in school. She made new friends. And every week, Judge Roy visited her, not as a judge, but almost like a father figure. For the first time, she felt safe. But danger doesn't knock before it comes. One evening, Zoya stayed late in the school library. She was reading a book about human rights, something her mother once believed in deeply. When she stepped out into the street, the sun was already down. The road was quiet, too quiet. She walked faster. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, following her. Zoya turned quickly. No one. She kept walking. The footsteps came again. Suddenly, a black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. A man in a suit looked at her. He had a cruel smile. Zoya, right? He said. She froze. Yes. And you are? The man leaned closer. His voice turned sharp. Just someone who remembers your mother. Zoya's heart stopped for a second. She had seen this man before, in the old photo her mother kept hidden. It was him, the factory owner, the man her mother tried to expose. Zoya stepped back. He smiled wider. Relax. I'm not here to hurt you. Not yet, he said coldly. Just giving friendly advice. Stop talking about the past. Your mother's story died with her. Let it stay dead. He drove off. Zoya stood frozen. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Not from fear, but from anger. She ran back to her hostel room and locked the door. She called Judge Roy. He answered on the first ring. Zoya, are you okay? She was breathing fast. He found me, she said. Roy sat up straight. Who? The factory owner. The one from Amy's story. He threatened me. Roy's voice turned serious. Stay in your room. Lock the windows. I'm coming right now. He arrived within 30 minutes, along with 2 officers. Zoya told him everything. Every word, every detail. Roy paced the room. He thinks he can scare you like he scared your mother, he said. But this time, he's wrong. The next morning, Roy filed an official report. But the police hesitated. Sir, that man has political friends. Many officers owe him favors. Roy's eyes narrowed. That didn't stop Amina. And it won't stop me now. He turned to Zoya. This won't be easy, he said. If we go after him, he'll fight back harder. Zoya looked him in the eyes. I'm not afraid anymore. I've already lost too much. That night, she took out her mother's photo again. Ammi, she whispered, they didn't listen to you, but they will listen to me. Meanwhile, in a dark room, the factory owner made a phone call. Get me the judge's record, he said. Everyone has a weakness. I'll find his. The battle between truth and power had begun again. But this time, the girl who once stood alone was no longer alone. Zoya stood outside the courtroom again. But this time, things were different. She wasn't wearing handcuffs. She wasn't scared. She had come not as a suspect, but as a witness. Beside her stood Judge Roy, not on the bench today, but beside her as an ally. And behind them, a lawyer ready to take on the most powerful man in the city. The courtroom was packed. Cameras, journalists, social workers. Everyone had come to hear the story of a girl who was once homeless, now ready to fight. And the man on trial, the factory owner. He sat across the room, looking calm. But his eyes were nervous. He had silenced many voices before. But this time, the voice was louder and stronger. The prosecutor stood up. We are here to present new evidence regarding years of abuse, illegal activity, and threats made by Mr. Kummel, the factory owner, against workers, especially women. Zoya was called to the stand. She walked slowly, held her mother's photo in one hand. And when she sat down, the room fell silent. Tell the court what you know, the lawyer said gently. Zoya nodded. My mother, Amina, worked for Mr. Kummel's factory 11 years ago. She saw him hurt another woman. She tried to speak out. She filed a complaint, but no one believed her. She died without justice. Gasps filled the room. And last week, she continued, this same man threatened me, told me to stop talking, said my mother's story should stay dead. She raised the photo. But I am here to say, her voice is not dead. I am her voice now. The room applauded. Even the judge had to call for silence. Then came the biggest surprise. Judge Roy stood up and requested permission to speak. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. He walked to the front. As a judge, I took an oath to protect justice. Years ago, I broke that oath. I let fear control me. I didn't fight for Amina. He looked at Zoya. But this young girl did. He turned to the courtroom. I am stepping down from my position today, not because I was forced, but because I want to fight this case beside her. Gasps again. But you're the judge, someone said. Roy smiled. Not anymore. Today, I am her lawyer. Over the next few weeks, the case shook the city. More women came forward. More stories were heard. The truth became impossible to ignore. And finally, the verdict came. The judge declared, Mr. Kummel is found guilty of harassment, threats, and illegal actions within his factory. He will face prison time, and his business license is canceled. Cheers broke out. Zoya covered her face, tears falling freely. Not from pain, but from victory. Outside the courtroom, reporters rushed to her. How does it feel to win? One asked. Zoya smiled softly. This wasn't about winning. It was about healing. For my mother. For every woman who stayed silent. Judge Roy stood beside her. Will you become a lawyer now? Another reporter asked. Zoya looked at Roy, then back at the crowd. Yes, she said. I will fight for truth, just like she tried to. Later that evening, Zoya returned to her mother's grave. She placed the necklace gently on the stone. "Amy," she whispered, "you were right. The world did listen, and your fight is over now." A gentle wind blew, almost like a hug, almost like a reply.